Major funding for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health, including Presbyterian in Charlotte and Forsyth in Winston-Salem, are affiliate heart hospitals of the Cleveland Clinic, consistently ranked #1 in the nation for heart care. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, proudly serving South Carolinians since 1946. And by Sonoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Between North Carolina's Republican political spring, South Carolina's momentum on passing its state budget, the advent of more and frequent new job announcements, and pronouncements by economists that we are back, if you will, after one of the toughest recessions on record, then shouldn't we be feeling pretty good about 2013? Welcome and thank you for supporting the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy. This time on CBR, jobs, economic development, and transportation. And later on, a returning special guest, Charlotte Airport boss, Jerry Orr.
Major funding also by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded March 14th, 2013. On this week's program, Doug Copeland of the Business Journal, Greg Robinson of the Orangeburg County Economic Development Commission, and special guest Jerry Orr, Aviation Director of the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Now, Chris Williams.
Welcome to our program. As always, you know, we start talking about half an hour before the program starts, and we get into all the good stuff. Welcome, guys. Good to have you both back.
Good to be here.
Doug, let me start with you. And I know you're not an economist. You play one on television sometimes, but
days like today.
You know, the stock market is up. Just a string of jobs announcements in both North and South Carolina. I mean, it's been very healthy. Capital investments up. You know, the litany of things. You know, homes are selling. Are we back?
Well, I think we are to a large extent. It looks different than it has in the past. You know, I know this is dwarfed by the MetLife announcement in Cary and Mecklenburg and Charlotte, but just the first 3 days of this past week, we announced 400 jobs in 3 different announcements in our paper.
See, now, to your point, that would be a big deal if we hadn't had that MetLife 2,600 largest ever jobs announcement in the state of North Carolina in a single fell swoop. So, but we're seeing a string of those, right? I mean, it's not just a one-off.
We are seeing a string of them, but I just got to tell you, a lot of it's in manufacturing, which, you know, we come from 2 manufacturing states and are extraordinarily proud of that. But manufacturing is different than it is. So as these companies come back, as they grow, they're not going to be the same number of jobs as there were even pre-recession. The automation is advancing at such a rapid rate. Chris, it's just fascinating to see. Yeah. But it doesn't mean quite as many jobs as it would have been 5, 6, 10 years ago.
So, and we could chase that rabbit hole, that skills gap rabbit hole. But let me come to you, Greg. Sure. Are we back? Same question.
We didn't go into this overnight, and we're not going to come out overnight. We are in a better position than we were 24, even 12 months ago. Mm-hmm. However, it is going to take significant amount of time, and these job announcements are great. But remember, manufacturing jobs are announced over a 5-year window. So it's going to take time to build those jobs and get capacity back into the system so that small business and confidence comes back with the economy.
In South Carolina, it seems like the Senate or the House, I'm not sure who's passed the budget, but the House has passed the budget. It's going to go to the Senate. There was about $100 billion or so, $100 million or so additional for transportation.
Yes.
In Orangeburg, in your area of dominant influence, anybody that's gone down that I-26 corridor knows, you know, how they can be driving on a razor's edge. Is this, tell us a little bit about this transportation this year, this budget for South Carolina. Is it going to be good? Is there going to be some momentum?
Well, the transportation initiatives for our state are so critical because of the kind of the connectivity that we have between our Port of Charleston, the influx. We're growing into one of the fastest rates of the port. As it comes through, and again, we're going to talk about the intermodal piece, but yes, we know that we're behind as far as the ability to address the capacity issues, address the maintenance issues related to our roads. The common fix. And we have to, as a state, have got to be that connection between the Port of Charleston, one of the largest seaports, to the Carolinas as a whole. There's not one county in our state that doesn't benefit from the Port of Charleston, and a number of counties in North Carolina that benefit from the Port of Charleston. And we have to make sure that we're maintaining the infrastructure in order to sustain this manufacturing renaissance that we're going to have.
Yeah, Doug, same issue with you, except a little bit different take. In North Carolina, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, there's a Republican spring going on. Of course, the first Republican governor since Reconstruction, the Senate, the House, they've got control of it. So from the point of view of the Triad, is this a good thing?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. The Triad has been very fortunate, and even in the past legislature, and the legislature was Republican prior to the governor's election, we did very well in terms of transportation funding to the point of we have some loops that are being built, and they have continued to be fully funded when other things have been cut. We are a logistics hub that maybe we'll get into a little more in the future of this program, but we have been very fortunate to maintain the funding, and I think to some extent in priorities in North Carolina, we've seen a big change in the past 4 to 6 years about how we set priorities and how we fund those priorities.
You know, and interestingly enough, it just comes to mind that former North Carolina Governor Bev Perdue, one of the last things she did, or at least in her last year in office, was this whole transportation funding thing. Surprised a lot of people that they found money to make sure that some of these last loops, Triad was one of them, Mecklenburg, some in Raleigh, did actually get flush with the money that they needed to do. Did that surprise you that transportation took a priority over education?
It didn't surprise me. I think she early in her term sort of reformed the prioritization of how projects were picked. It's no longer, we're no longer building roads to nowhere. I know that was another state, but we have a couple of those in North Carolina. But transportation, the whole manufacturing sector, the airport that we're going to talk about, it's all critical to having a good transportation infrastructure. And I think one of the things we were talking before the program I'm so impressed with is this Yadkin Valley Bridge. I mean, that could have shut down commerce in North and South Carolina if that bridge had any problems. It got built in record time. And I know the governor will never get credit for it, but she fast-tracked it, she found the funding for it, and it got built as soon as any bridge project like that I've seen in my lifetime.
You talk about critical issues. Back to South Carolina, the port deepening project that was debated and fought for to get that money, to use your term, fast-tracked. You got that money that may be tied up now in the cuts and the sequester. So what happens to the ports if this thing is not sped along?
No, it's about prioritization. And obviously, when you're looking at the agencies that are from the federal level, it's all about prioritization. First and foremost is safety. First and foremost is national security. But we have to make sure that as a state and as a region, we are prioritizing the deepening to coincide with the world market. And we have to make sure that whatever we decide at the federal level, because it has to be decided very soon, with these cuts, you're looking at slowdowns. You're looking at the ability for us to just kind of pull back, and you're going to see that in the marketplace. And the marketplace has got to stand up to the leadership and tell them to fix it. And that's can't be any more point blank than that. It's all about the prioritization. We really don't know yet, Chris, until we see the full effects of how this is going to affect the 4 different federal government agencies, Customs, Corps. You're looking at all of the different independent groups that are affected by this sequestration issue.
You know, Greg, does this put additional pressure on Governor Haley about taking another pass at would a gas tax make sense here?
Well, you know, those are issues that have to be challenged in the General Assembly. From a rural perspective, we personally feel yes, that we have to look at one of the lowest gasoline taxes in the entire country, one of the highest concentrations of roadways in the entire country as far as per capita. So we have to look at what are we going to do to prioritize logistics. Because in manufacturing, just like with Husqvarna that's located in Orangeburg or Continental and Sumter, those companies are manufacturers that make a product, but they're a logistical company that make a product.
Yeah.
So it's all about logistics.
Well, we're going to keep this whole transportation hub, logistics, air, sea, land thing going here with our guest in just a second. Guys, stay with me here. Next week on this program, you know, there have been a lot of job announcements, a string of them, and not since the beginning of the year, but in 2012. Next week on our program, the issue is competitive incentives. What about competitive incentives? Are we taking another look at it? Are we giving away too much? Are we giving away enough? On the program, David Swindell from UNC Charlotte. Also, along with David, returning on this program, he is an economist from the College of Charleston. Dr. Frank Hefner will be on the program from Asheville in the western part of North Carolina, and the Asheville Chamber, Kit Kramer, will be here. And also returning on this program, the South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance boss, the ever quiet and ever demure Louis Gossett. And if you know I'm kidding to some degree if you know Louis at all. The Carolinas' busiest and biggest airport seems to be going through a seminal period in its life. First, the North Carolina General Assembly is temerariously pushing through new legislation to spin the airport out from beneath city control. Second, the continued development of an intermodal facility that will closely connect air, land, and sea. Third, the U.S. Airways American Airlines merger. And fourth, the not immediate, but maybe not anticipated coming retirement of longtime Charlotte Douglas International Airport Director and now our guest again on this program, Jerry Orr. Mr. Director, welcome back.
Thank you.
And I think it's important to say, and I will say this as a disclaimer, that I know you cannot publicly talk about, you are gagged to some degree about talking about an airport authority, which you think it should be, how it is going. But Jerry, let me ask you this. Charlotte Douglas, no surprise, it is a very important connection point here for the Carolinas. It is one of the busiest airports in this country. What does it look like? What do we need to get right? What does the leadership in the airport look like next generation?
Well, I would hope it would be more of the same. It takes a long time to get things done in an airport, and I think we really need to continue on the track that we've been on for many years. Provide facilities just at the right time, just as they're needed.
So a long time to get things done. It doesn't seem that way the last few years. You got a third runway open. You've got now a almost $100 million intermodal concept with one of the major rail lines. You've got a fourth runway. How have you been able to compress those size and scale projects into a short period of time?
Well, people all the time tell me that I love what you've done with this, that, and the other, like you just did. But remember that I've been working on that runway for 25 years before we ever started construction. And we started working on the intermodal yard in 1994. That's a pretty good while ago.
Yeah. Doug?
Got a question about some of the changes that in the jets that carriers are using. We're getting rid of these small commuter jets, and so the 50 passengers are going away and they're moving to 70 or 80. What impact does that have on an airport like yours, the facilities? I mean, I believe Charlotte has a commuter terminal, don't you? Talk a little bit about that change and what it does to you, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yes, we do have a commuter regional terminal. The only thing constant in aviation is change, and long-term planning for an airline is usually about 6 months. Obviously, we can't build a new terminal in 6 months, so we have to kind of sense the marketplace all the time and feel when those small jets are going to hit the marketplace and have the facility ready to go when they show up. Now they're getting ready to go away, and we have to sense where we're going from there and convert those facilities into what they need to be.
So what do they need to be? I mean, if you're looking around a corner on this one, what does that look like?
Well, you know, airports are somewhat competitive and airlines are competitive, so I really don't want to tell all the other airports where we're headed. But we're headed for bigger airplanes because that's how the airlines make money. Mm-hmm. So that seems pretty easy for me to figure out. I don't know why the airlines can't figure that out.
Greg?
Yeah, and I agree with you. Bigger trains, bigger planes, and bigger automobiles, right? That's
right.
commend you on your infrastructure efforts. It is about infrastructure, because we wouldn't have this discussion today if you hadn't been really pushing very hard on that. As far as the infrastructure related to the linkage between Charleston with the post-Panamax ships, these big ships coming in, getting ready for your intermodal capacity, tell me a little bit about the timing issues. Is that part of your game plan and strategy as far as the growth of the Charlotte Airport?
Absolutely. A great time to bring a new facility online is when there's some sea change in the marketplace. And opening up the Panama Canal will be such a sea change. The ships will get bigger, there'll be more containers, they'll get here quicker, and you don't make money by having your container sit on the ship in the harbor or sit on the dock. You want to get it delivered.
So do you see this intermodal project that you're working on at Charlotte Douglas, is this an extension of something like a South Carolina Ports Authority? Do you see that as a connectivity, I mean, as being one, if you will?
Absolutely. When you, as the end user, takes delivery of a container from somewhere in the world, you don't really care how it got there. You just want it to get there in good shape when you want it. Not too soon, not too late. It's not just in time, it's just at the right time. And so you don't care whether it came by ship, came by rail, truck, what port it came through. You want it when you want it, and you want it at the cheapest way.
Doug?
This merger of U.S. Air and American Airlines, talk to it from two perspectives. From your own perspective, how it's going to impact Charlotte Airport, and secondly, as a longtime industry expert, what's it going to do to other airports, say in North and South Carolina?
What I think the great opportunity for us is in Charlotte is that the long-term expansion opportunities are in developing economies. Our economy is a mature economy, so that means that growth in aviation is going to be in international routes. And what U.S. Airways merging with American to become the largest airline in the world gives us is immediate access to all of those airports that American currently serves, which are in the Pacific Rim, in the Mideast, in Europe, all over the world.
So would you expect, Jerry, an additional international flights directly to Charlotte?
We expect additional continued growth in international flights to Charlotte.
And I will say this too, as far as the international connectivity, South Carolina has been fortunate. We've obviously one of the largest international investments as far as per capita in the country. Clearly with Germany leading the way, UK, France, Japan, even China. One of the things is for rural area being 90 minutes away, I sell Charlotte just as hard as I sell our regional airports. But tell me a little bit more about that international connectivity, because that is the biggest issue for the Carolinas, in my opinion, for international marketability.
You're absolutely right, and you know I often say you can be at Los Angeles, be within sight of the terminal, still be 60 minutes away. Yeah. So that's yeah. Really not very far. It's a global business now, and everybody does business globally, whether they know it or not. And to do business there, you've got to be able to get there from here. So it doesn't matter whether it's passenger or freight, you need that connectivity to be in the game.
Right. You know, I want to keep talking about this idea that the airport, Charlotte Douglas Airport, your facility, and the intermodal piece, and try to understand, you know, we look at Charlotte Douglas, say, okay, biggest airport in the Carolinas, top 10 certainly when it comes to busy in the nation. When you look at it, do you see that, you know, yeah, we're here, but here's really where we need to be? And how far out do you look when you plan? And what do you see when you see what Charlotte Douglas may look like in 10 years?
Well, I think a lot. And Dale Earnhardt said number 2 is just the first loser. So we want to be number 1. That's the goal. That's the only goal at anything we do. And we don't want to miss any opportunities. If we miss opportunities, then all of these people will pay the price for that. And so we have to think about everything. We have to try to figure out where things are going and get there first. That's really that simple, I think.
You know, with the status of intergovernmental relations, you know, being whatever they are, and I don't necessarily just mean what goes on between Charlotte and Raleigh, or the airport and the legislature and the city of Charlotte, but I'm talking about this lack of civility, if you will. How do you, in the next decade, Jerry, whoever's running the airport, how do they, you know, the capital improvement projects, the intermodal, when you talk about raising money, I mean, how do you make sure that you're not handicapped by your own team when you're trying to hit this bogey 10 years out?
Well, of course, those are obstacles, and you have to focus on the reality of the situation. And that to me is the marketplace. The marketplace doesn't care about county lines, city limits, state lines, or countries. Mm-hmm. And so we have to think in those terms. If it's a good plan, if you can pay for it, if it doesn't cost the public anything, and it provides jobs and grows the job market, then they ought to be not only happy about it, they ought to be thankful mm-hmm. for it.
So.
You talked about competition a minute ago. I'm just curious, again, putting on your industry expert hat. You're competitors with some of the airports in South Carolina. You're certainly competitive with the Greensboro Airport. Do y'all ever collaborate as well? And how do things work in terms of your industry across these two states?
Absolutely. The last person I talked to today before I left the office was your director in Greensboro. We collaborate on things, and if they have a question or need some help, all they have to do is pick up the phone. We get along very well. The competition is, you know, we want to be the best we can be. I'm sure they want to be the best they can be. And the passenger and the cargo are the ones that'll make that decision. But we know if we're going to continue to grow and we're going to continue to find our future, we need to always strive to be the best.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, if you're not first, you're last, right? So we've got to make sure that we're addressing the infrastructure needs. And I know that from an international perspective, when they come over, there may sometimes the plans that we have in place. But from a local manufacturing recruiter, how do I best sell the international market and the territory and the plan that you have in place, so those remote areas in and around Charlotte, and I'm talking rural North Carolina too, so that we can make sure that everybody is singing the same song?
Well, I think those people, you know, we call them the marks. Yeah. I think those people that you're trying to recruit are looking to get some critical questions answered. And they want to know they can get whatever their good or product is, they can get it to here, there, or everywhere. And it's all about efficiency and effectiveness, because that gets to the bottom line. It does. And that's what is first and foremost on their mind. So the more that you can talk intelligently to them about our facility or facilities, the more comfortable they'll get that, wow, the international airport is 60 minutes away. That's no problem. Yeah. And by the way, the parking's cheap there. Yeah. So you know, the more that you can say that gives them comfort that I can do quite well here, yeah, the better off you are.
Jerry, we literally have a minute left. Sequestration has really identified a lot of FAA targets. Smith Reynolds in Winston-Salem, Myrtle Beach, Florence, Concord. You all have some, but these that I just mentioned are actually, they're going to lose their tower. So how tough is this going to be for you? How punitive will this be for you operating under sequestration?
That depends on how long it lasts, of course.
How long do you plan for it to last?
Well, we have to plan for it lasting forever. Worst case. You always plan for the worst case, and then anything makes you look good. Anything less than that. Yeah. We're very sorry for Myrtle Beach. We feel for them, but we don't really care. Yeah. Concord we care about. because our control of service Concord.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I know there's a lot more to talk about, but thank you for being on the program. Congratulations again on some of the great successes out there for all of us. Nice to see you again.
Good.
Thank you. Greg, thanks for joining us once again.
Good
luck on that new interchange.
That's right.
We're all excited about that driving through Orangeburg on I-26.
Thank you.
Doug, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Always good to be with you.
Until next week, I'm Chris William. Hope you have a good weekend. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation in Charlotte enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. Novant Health, including Presbyterian in Charlotte and Forsyth in Winston-Salem, are affiliate heart hospitals of the Cleveland Clinic, consistently ranked #1 in the nation for heart care. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, proudly serving South Carolinians since 1946. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.